And so what they've done is site the nuclear facility way, way away in the far southwest, which also is poor in any case.
It's very odd because you see people going about their business, big sheds, big buildings, the sort of normal Navy boats moored up, being refueled, restocked. That's what you'd expect to see. But then, just sort of in one part of the dockyard, there's this kind of, well, it is, I suppose, a kind of submarine graveyard, where they've got these old submarines and they're big, mighty machines just sitting there, and you can see the rust on some of them. And it's quite poignant, really. They're redundant. Nobody knows what on earth to do with them, essentially. You know, they're kind of too dangerous to touch.
Through the early 21st century, we've seen a major incident of nuclear spillage at the dockyard every year.
And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. I don't think anyone's blaming the individual workers, but clearly when you've had leakages, security breaches, flaws in emergency procedures, nuclear trains being derailed, workers exposed to dangerous nuclear dosages, special measures having to be extended time after time, the Environment and Food Agency warnings about radiation levels and even fatalities in the facility, clearly something is not right.
If you just put in Devonport nuclear submarines into a Google search, you will find pictures of these things falling apart. The idea that there is a nuclear reactor on board and inside that needs to be broken up and taken away, but is bobbing at anchor because they haven't got the facilities to do anything about it, is really quite awesome. I mean, the reality is we have all this stuff rotting in the middle of a city of 250,000 people.
The Navy are not in touch with reality. As a group, we went one day to visit the Emergency Control Centre, and it's a little bit like something out of a James Bond movie. It's got all the desks, all the phones, all the monitors on the wall, all the maps miles around, and it's the control room. So we're having a look at this, mouth ajar, thinking, wow, this is fabulous. And I just asked a question. I said, excuse me, can you tell me what happens to these poor people in the SRC, which is an office block right next to the submarine refits? Oh, I'm glad you asked that, Mr. Avent, they said. They'll immediately be evacuated to the nuclear shelter, which is 300 yards in the bottom of HMS Drake. Fabulous. What happens to the children in the primary school at the bottom of my road, which is about the same distance as the SRC is from the submarine at Nine Dock? All the jaws on the Navy guys drop, bang, and one of these guys with all the pips on his shoulder says, oh, the radiation probably wouldn't go over the dockyard wall. At which time we knew they were taking the mickey and we decided we'd go. We'd had time to leave, I think, and we went. But that's the sort of brainwashing that frightens the hell out of me. If it's a emergency exercise, I want it to know, I want confidence to know that it's going to look after my children and my grandchildren.
They also have dished out in the past iodine tablets to all the population around the dockyard on the basis that radiation firstly goes into the thyroid. The thyroid is the most vulnerable to nuclear isotopes ingesting into the cell structure, and therefore they tell everybody to take a pill and everything will be all right. It's an absolute nonsense. And then when you get the fact that schools are given out iodine tablets so that they can give them to primary school children to protect them in the event, well, this is nonsense, because the thyroid isn't even developed in the prepubescent child, and so it has absolutely no impact or effect at all. And you build up this pattern of how they pacify and how they con the public to a point of it is absolutely nonsensical and a complete lie. But we put up with it because we feel powerless to do much about it.
People say it's either the nuclear or unemployment. Plymouth needs these jobs, we can't afford to get rid of these well-paid jobs, etc., etc. But that for me is not a convincing argument, because that seems to think there'd be no efforts to re-employ people with more useful production.
We're absolutely clear that the establishment of Plymouth is really a tying together of the political establishment, the military establishment and the corporations. Plymouth University itself receives enormous amount of funding from the nuclear industry to make sure that everybody is on message and everybody puts out the message that Plymouth would be nothing without the nuclear dockyard and is absolutely dependent on it.
Plymouth City Council over the years, under different political leaderships, and the default position of the trades unions, and indeed many people, is it's good for Plymouth to have as many jobs as we can, we don't really care what they are.
Why are you blaming me for that?
Because you're stopping nuclear coming in, and that's the only work they've got.
And that is not the only
Yes,
work
it
they've
is.
got. And if it is, it shouldn't be.
Nuclear's the only subs we've got now.
They're not, actually. The only submarines.
No,
You
no,
tell
we
me
have
what they
got
got then.
some commercial. We have got
Worry
some.
about it. That's all.
Shut up, there's no need to tell, they're only doing their job, Jared. There's no need to tell them to piss off. We haven't given their names and that's it.
Still get bloody killed in bloody hospital.
You can get killed with a cigarette.
You do not see our councillors, either Labour or Conservative, actually banging on about the level of child poverty and the need for reduction of deprivation in the city. In fact, it's been dumbed down over the years. Whilst you do see all of those people absolutely cheerleading about the necessity of the nuclear dockyard. So the link between the dockyard and poverty is indirect, but absolutely there.
These days, paddlers are even scared to get their hands dirty and wet in the water. That it wasn't always like that. We used to play and swim in the river on sunny days. We'd love it.